In a world where royal protocol dictates every gesture, where cameras capture every breath, and where public affection is measured in millimeters, one spontaneous touch changed everything. It wasn't the grand gesture the tabloids expected. No dramatic kiss on a palace balcony. No fairy tale proposal under spotlights. Instead, it was something far more precious and infinitely more real, a fleeting moment of pure, unguarded tenderness between two people who happened to be the future King and Queen of England. The photograph would circle the globe within hours. Royal watchers would dissect every pixel. Body language experts would analyze the angle of their hands. But, for those 30 seconds in a small Welsh village, Catherine and William forgot about crowns and cameras, protocols and public scrutiny. They were just Kate and William, two people deeply in love, stealing a moment of genuine intimacy in a world that rarely allows such luxuries. This is the story of that moment. The story of what led to it, what it meant, and why sometimes the smallest gestures speak louder than the grandest proclamations. The morning mist clung to the Welsh valleys like a whispered secret, and Catherine Middleton, though the world knew her as the Princess of Wales, felt the familiar flutter of anticipation that always came with these unscripted moments. She adjusted her cream-colored coat against the October chill, her fingers automatically smoothing the fabric in a gesture that had become second nature after years in the public eye. William emerged from the black Range Rover first, his movements carrying that particular blend of confidence and restraint that marked him as both prince and protector. The security detail fanned out with practiced invisibility, but Catherine barely noticed them anymore. Her attention was entirely focused on the small crowd gathered in the town square of Llanfairpwll, their faces bright with excitement and genuine warmth. "Look at them," she murmured to William as they approached the rope barriers. "They've been waiting in this cold for hours." William's response was characteristic, a slight tightening around his eyes that she'd learned to read as deep emotion carefully contained. "They always do," he said quietly. "That's what makes this so." He didn't finish the sentence, but Catherine understood. After more than a decade together, they developed their own language of half-finished thoughts and meaningful silences. What made these visits so profound was precisely this, the genuine affection of people who had no obligation to care, but chose to anyway. The Royal Protection Officer gave them the subtle nod that meant all clear, and, suddenly, they were among the crowd. Catherine's training kicked in immediately, the warm smile, the direct eye contact, the way of making each person feel like the only person in the world for those few precious seconds. But today felt different somehow. Perhaps it was the autumn light filtering through the ancient oak trees, or the way the Welsh language floated around them like music, but she felt more present, more herself than she had in months. Mrs. Elena Griffiths, 73 years old and proud of it, was first in line. She'd positioned herself strategically at dawn, armed with a thermos of tea and enough determination to outlast weather and weariness. When Catherine approached, Elena's weathered hands trembled slightly as she extended a small bouquet of daffodils, not the pristine arrangements usually presented to royalty, but flowers clearly picked from her own garden, still carrying traces of morning dew. "Your Royal Highness," Elena began, her Welsh accent thick with emotion, "these are from my garden. My husband planted the bulbs 50 years ago, before he passed. I thought you might like them." Catherine accepted the flowers with both hands, bringing them close to her face to breathe in their delicate fragrance. "They're absolutely beautiful, Mrs. Griffiths. Please, tell me about your husband. What was his name?" "Gareth," Elena replied, her eyes brightening. "He was a teacher here for 40 years. Taught half the village to read, he did. Always said that love was the best lesson anyone could learn." The conversation continued for several minutes, longer than protocol typically allowed, but Catherine found herself genuinely captivated by Elena's stories. William, meanwhile, was engaged with a group of local school children who had been excused from classes for the royal visit. One small boy, perhaps 6 years old, had worked up the courage to ask if William really lived in a castle. "Well," William said, crouching down to the boy's eye level, "I do live in a very old house with lots of rooms. But, you know what? I bet your house is much more fun. Do you have a garden where you can play football?" The boy nodded enthusiastically, launching into an animated description of his backyard adventures. William listened with complete attention, asking questions about the boy's dog, his favorite games, his plans for half-term holiday. The genuine interest in his voice, the way he made space for each answer, reminded Catherine of why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. As the morning progressed, they moved through the crowd with practiced choreography, but Catherine noticed something happening. The usual invisible barrier that separated royalty from subjects seemed to be dissolving. Perhaps it was the informal setting, or the way the Welsh community had welcomed them not as distant figures but as guests in their home. Whatever the reason, conversations lasted longer, laughter came more easily, and the careful distances of protocol gradually shortened. They visited the local primary school next, where the children had prepared a presentation about Welsh culture. Catherine found herself sitting cross-legged on the classroom floor, completely absorbed in 8-year-old Megan's explanation of how to count to 10 in Welsh. The little girl was patient with Catherine's pronunciation attempts, giggling delightedly when Catherine mangled Schwech beyond recognition. "You're getting better," Megan announced with the brutal honesty of childhood. "My dad says Welsh is hard for English people, but you're trying really good." William, who had been speaking with the headmaster about the school's reading programs, caught this exchange and smiled. Not his public smile, the one photographers loved, but the private smile Catherine saw when they were alone, watching their own children attempt impossible tasks with determined concentration. The visit to the local community center came next. Here, older residents had gathered to share stories of the village's history. Catherine learned about the flooding of 1947, the celebration when electricity first came to the valley, the way the community had rallied during the difficult years of the 1980s when the local mine closed. Each story was a thread in the larger tapestry of Welsh resilience and community spirit. One elderly gentleman, Thomas, had brought his accordion and insisted on playing traditional Welsh songs. His arthritic fingers moved slowly but surely across the keys, producing melodies that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Catherine found herself deeply moved by the music, by the way it connected past and present, by the pride in Thomas's eyes as he played. "That was my grandfather's accordion," Thomas explained when he finished. "He played it in the mines, during breaks." Said music made the darkness lighter. William asked if he might try, and Thomas's face lit up with pleasure. The prince's attempts were less than successful, producing more wheezing than melody, but his willingness to try, his laughter at his own mistakes, endeared him to everyone present. Catherine watched this interaction with growing warmth. This was the William she'd first met at university, unpretentious, genuinely curious, comfortable with being imperfect in public. As they prepared to leave the community center, Catherine realized something had shifted during their visit. The formal boundaries of royal protocol hadn't disappeared entirely, but they'd become more fluid, more human. She felt connected not just to the people they'd met, but to something larger, to the sense of community that seemed to flow through these Welsh valleys like the rivers that carved them. The final stop of the morning was the local market, where vendors had set up stalls displaying everything from hand-knitted scarves to locally made cheese. Catherine particularly admired the work of a young woman named Sarah, who created jewelry from Welsh slate and silver. Each piece was unique, incorporating traditional Celtic designs with contemporary sensibility. "I started this after I lost my job at the tourist center," Sarah explained, her hands steady despite her obvious nervousness. "My grandmother taught me the old patterns. Said they carried protection and good fortune." Catherine examined the pieces carefully, asking detailed questions about the techniques and materials. When Sarah mentioned that she was saving money to attend art college, Catherine's interest deepened. They discussed the challenges of pursuing creative careers, the importance of preserving traditional crafts, the way art could build bridges between generations. "Your grandmother would be very proud," Catherine said finally. "These are truly beautiful. They honor the tradition while making it entirely your own." Sarah's eyes filled with tears at these words. Later, she would tell her friends that the princess had seen something in her work that she hadn't quite seen herself, the connection between honoring the past and creating something new. As the morning visit drew to a close, William and Catherine found themselves at the edge of the town square, preparing for their departure. The crowd had grown throughout the morning, word spreading through social media and simple word of mouth. Yet the atmosphere remained intimate rather than overwhelming, warm rather than frenzied. It was then that something unexpected happened. As Catherine turned to wave goodbye, her heel caught in a small gap between the cobblestones. She stumbled slightly, not enough to fall, but enough to lose her balance for a moment. William, who had been half-turned toward the car, reacted instantly. His hand reached out, not with the careful, measured gesture of public protocol, but with the immediate, protective instinct of someone who loved her. Their eyes met in that moment of connection, and something passed between them, a recognition of their shared humanity beneath the royal roles, a reminder of the private people they remained despite the public positions they held. The moment lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but, in those seconds, years of shared experience, mutual support, and deep affection crystallized into something visible, something real, something the cameras couldn't help but capture. Neither of them realized in that moment how significant those 3 seconds would become. How the photograph of William's protective gesture, Catherine's grateful smile, and their brief but intimate connection would travel around the world. How it would remind people everywhere that beneath the crowns and ceremonies, the protocols and public duties, they were simply two people who had found in each other something worth protecting, worth cherishing, worth loving. As they drove away from Llanfairpwll, Catherine leaned back against the leather seat and closed her eyes. The morning had been perfect in ways she hadn't expected, meaningful in ways she was still processing. William reached over and took her hand, a simple gesture, but one that connected this moment to that earlier moment, the private to the public, the royal to the deeply human. That was. She began. I know, William replied, understanding completely. Outside the car windows, the Welsh countryside rolled past in its ancient rhythm, keeping its secrets as it always had, but perhaps holding this new one a little more gently than the rest. Sarah Mitchell had been covering royal visits for the Daily Telegraph for 8 years, long enough to recognize the rhythm of these events and the small moments that elevated them from routine to remarkable. She'd positioned herself strategically near the town square's exit, her camera ready for the standard departure shots. What she captured instead would define her career and spark a global conversation about love, authenticity, and the human side of royalty. The photograph was technically perfect. The autumn light created a natural soft focus around William and Catherine's faces. The cobblestone street provided texture and context, anchoring the moment in a specific place and time. But what made the image extraordinary wasn't the technical execution, it was the unguarded emotion it captured. William's protective instinct, reaching out to steady Catherine. Her grateful smile, genuine and unperformed. The way their bodies naturally turned toward each other, creating an intimate space within the public arena. Sarah knew immediately she had something special. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reviewed the image on her camera's display. In 12 years of photography, she'd learned to trust her instincts about which shots would resonate, and everything about this moment told her it would travel far beyond the usual royal coverage. Within minutes of sending the image to her editor, Sarah's phone began ringing. First the Telegraph's photo editor, his voice tight with excitement. Then, the royal correspondent, asking for every detail about the context and timing. Then, international news services, social media managers, and television producers, all hungry for the story behind the photograph. This is going to be huge, her editor, David Phillips, told her over the phone. I've seen a lot of royal photos, Sarah, but this one, there's something different about it. Something real. By noon, the photograph was trending on Twitter. #RoyalMoment became a global conversation, with the image shared hundreds of thousands of times across platforms. But the response wasn't the usual mix of royal worship and Republican criticism. Instead, people seemed genuinely moved by what they were seeing, a moment of authentic human connection that transcended titles and traditions. The comments were revealing. This is what love looks like after 12 years of marriage, wrote one user. He reached for her like she was the most precious thing in the world, observed another. Finally, a royal photo that doesn't look staged, commented a user from Australia. They look at each other the way I hope someone looks at me someday, posted a young woman from Canada. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a professor of media studies at King's College London, was having lunch with colleagues when the image appeared on her phone. As someone who'd spent years analyzing royal imagery and its cultural impact, she immediately recognized the photograph's significance. Look at this, she said, showing her phone to her lunch companions. This changes the entire narrative. Her colleagues gathered around the small screen, studying the image with academic interest. The conversation that followed would later form the basis of Dr. Martinez's widely read analysis of modern royal communication. What's fascinating, she explained to her colleagues, is how this single image accomplishes what years of carefully managed public relations haven't been able to achieve. It makes them relatable without diminishing them. It shows vulnerability without weakness. It's simultaneously royal and utterly human. Meanwhile, in Buckingham Palace, the royal communications team was having a very different kind of conversation. Communications Secretary Jonathan Hayes had worked for the royal household for 15 years, navigating scandals and celebrations with equal skill. But this situation was unprecedented, positive coverage so overwhelming it was almost as challenging to manage as a crisis. The response has been universally positive, his deputy, Emma Richardson, reported during their emergency meeting. Every major outlet is running it. Social media engagement is through the roof. The tone is entirely supportive. Hayes nodded, but his expression remained cautious. It's wonderful, obviously. But we need to be careful about how we respond. The magic of this moment is its spontaneity. Any attempt to capitalize on it or manufacture similar moments will backfire immediately. This wisdom proved prescient. Within hours, other royal families around the world were subtly attempting to recreate similar moments of spontaneous affection. None succeeded. The authenticity that made William and Catherine's moment so powerful couldn't be replicated or manufactured. In Spain, Queen Letitia's communications team arranged for her to stumble slightly during a public walkabout, hoping to capture a similar protective gesture from King Felipe. The resulting photographs felt forced and awkward. In Sweden, Crown Princess Victoria's team suggested she and Prince Daniel recreate the pose for their upcoming engagement photos. The suggestion was politely declined. Back in Wales, the residents of Llanfairpwll were discovering they'd become part of a global story. Elena Griffiths, the elderly woman who'd presented Catherine with her garden daffodils, found herself fielding calls from international media outlets wanting to know what she'd witnessed. It was just natural, she told a reporter from Good Morning America. You could see how much they care for each other. No different from any other couple in love, really. Except most couples don't have the whole world watching, do they? Thomas, the accordion player from the community center, had a similar response when contacted by the BBC. They were lovely people. Made time for everyone, asked real questions, seemed genuinely interested in our stories. When she nearly stumbled, his reaction was instant. Just shows what kind of man he is, doesn't it? The photograph's impact extended far beyond traditional royal coverage. Relationship counselors began using it in their practices as an example of healthy protective behavior. Wedding photographers reported couples specifically requesting similar poses. Fashion magazines analyzed Catherine's outfit from the moment, noting how her choice of accessible, relatively affordable clothing contributed to the image's relatability. Dr. Sarah Chen, a body language expert frequently consulted by media outlets, provided analysis that was shared across platforms. What we're seeing here is completely authentic nonverbal communication. William's reach is immediate and instinctive, there's no calculation, no awareness of cameras. Catherine's response shows genuine gratitude and trust. Their body language creates what we call shared space, they're operating as a unit, not as two individuals conscious of their public roles. The international response was equally fascinating. In Japan, where public displays of affection between married couples are traditionally rare, the photograph sparked discussions about changing social norms. Japanese social media users shared the image widely, with many commenting on how refreshing it was to see a couple comfortable with showing their affection publicly. In France, where President Macron and his wife Brigitte were known for their displays of affection, cultural commentators noted the different quality of William and Catherine's moment. The Macron's affection always seems somewhat performative, wrote Le Figaro's social columnist. This Welsh moment feels entirely private, despite being entirely public. The photograph's timing couldn't have been better for the monarchy's reputation. Recent polls had shown declining support among younger demographics, with many viewing the royal family as out of touch and irrelevant. But this single image seemed to shift perceptions dramatically. Social media monitoring services reported a significant uptick in positive royal sentiment, particularly among millennials and Generation Z users. 24-year-old marketing executive Jessica Torres exemplified this shift. She'd previously been ambivalent about the royal family, viewing them as expensive relics. But the photograph changed her perspective. "I shared it on Instagram with the caption relationship goals," she later explained to a researcher studying the image's impact. "Something about it just felt real. Like, here are these people with unimaginable pressure and scrutiny, and they still have this beautiful, protective love for each other. It made me think maybe the royalty thing isn't just about privilege and duty. Maybe there's something genuinely valuable about having people who represent constancy and commitment." The artistic community also responded strongly. Portrait photographers analyzed the image's composition and lighting. Social realists praised its documentary quality. Even abstract artists found inspiration in what they saw as the intersection of public and private, performance and authenticity. Gallery owner Marcus Webb organized an impromptu exhibition titled Public Moments, Private Hearts, featuring the royal photograph alongside works exploring similar themes of intimacy in public spaces. The exhibition, which opened just 5 days after the photograph was taken, drew unprecedented crowds and extended its run 3 times. By evening, the photograph had appeared on the front pages of newspapers across 6 continents. Television news programs led with the story, not as celebrity gossip but as a human interest piece about enduring love and authentic connection. Radio talk shows dedicated entire segments to discussing what the image revealed about modern relationships and public life. The response from other members of the royal family was carefully calibrated but clearly supportive. King Charles reached for comment during a private engagement, simply said, "Catherine and William represent the best of what our family can be." Queen Camilla, known for her dry wit, reportedly remarked to a friend, "Finally, a royal story that makes people smile instead of cringe." Prince Harry and Meghan, speaking from California, released a statement through their spokesperson expressing happiness for William and Catherine. The statement was brief but warm, noting that authentic moments of love and connection are always worth celebrating. Royal watchers analyzed every word for signs of ongoing family tensions, but found only genuine warmth. As night fell across the UK, the photograph continued to circulate. It appeared in WhatsApp family group chats, on Facebook walls, in Instagram stories, and in TikTok videos analyzing body language and relationship dynamics. The image had transcended its origins as a news photograph and become something more significant, a symbol of enduring love in an age of cynicism, of authentic connection in an era of performance, of hope in a world that often seemed to have forgotten what hope looked like. In their private apartment at Windsor Castle, William and Catherine were finally seeing the full scope of the response. Palace staff had been providing updates throughout the day, but it wasn't until evening that they had time to properly absorb what had happened. Catherine scrolled through her phone, reading comments and sharing the most touching ones with William. "Listen to this one," she said. "My grandparents were married for 67 years, and my grandfather still reached for my grandmother exactly like this whenever she needed support. This photo reminds me that real love doesn't fade, it just gets quieter and stronger." William looked up from his own phone, where he'd been reading international coverage. "This one says, I'm getting married next month and I hope my fiancé and I still look at each other like this after 12 years. They sat together in comfortable silence, processing the day's unexpected turn. Neither had anticipated that a moment of simple, instinctive care would resonate so powerfully with people around the world. But perhaps that was precisely why it had, because it was simple, because it was instinctive, because it reminded everyone that beneath the complexity of modern life and the performance of public roles, the most important things remained wonderfully, reassuringly human. "We should probably discuss this with the communications team tomorrow," Catherine said eventually. "Probably," William agreed. "Though I'm not sure what there is to discuss. We can't manufacture moments like this, and we wouldn't want to if we could." "No," Catherine replied, reaching for his hand. "Some things are too precious to perform." Outside, the world continued to share their photograph, to comment on their love, to find hope in their authentic moment of connection. But, inside their quiet apartment, they were simply what they'd always been beneath the titles and duties, two people who had found in each other something worth protecting, something worth cherishing, something worth loving. The photograph had captured a moment, but the love it revealed had been building for years, strengthening through challenges, deepening through shared experiences, becoming the foundation upon which they built not just their relationship but their approach to public service. Tomorrow would bring new duties, new challenges, new opportunities to serve. But tonight, they simply held each other close and marveled at how a small moment of human tenderness had reminded the world of what really mattered. 6 months after the photograph was taken, its impact continued to ripple through unexpected corners of society. Dr. Rebecca Martinez was delivering a lecture at Harvard University on authentic leadership in the digital age, using the image as a case study in how genuine moments could cut through media noise and cynicism. What we witnessed, she explained to her audience of graduate students and visiting scholars, was the power of unguarded authenticity in a world oversaturated with performance. The photograph succeeded precisely because it wasn't trying to succeed. It simply captured two people being themselves in a moment of genuine connection. The lecture hall was packed beyond capacity, with students sitting in the aisles and standing against the walls. The interest wasn't just academic, many of these young people had shared the photograph themselves, had been moved by it in ways they were still trying to understand. Maria Santos, a doctoral candidate in sociology, raised her hand during the question period. Professor Martinez, you've shown us how this single image changed public perception of the royal family, at least temporarily. But, do you think it had any lasting impact on how we think about relationships and authenticity more broadly? Dr. Martinez smiled. She'd been hoping for exactly this question. That's perhaps the most significant aspect of this phenomenon. 6 months later, we're still seeing evidence of what I call the Welsh effect, people actively seeking and celebrating authentic moments of connection in their own lives and relationships. The evidence was compelling. Wedding photographers reported a surge in requests for candid, unposed moments. Social media platforms saw increased sharing of genuine family photographs over carefully staged content. Relationship counselors noted that couples were referencing the photograph when discussing what they wanted their partnerships to look like. In Wales, the impact had been even more profound. Llanfairpwll had become an unexpected destination for couples from around the world, all hoping to recreate their own version of the magical moment. The local tourism board had handled the influx carefully, working to preserve the village's authentic character while accommodating the increased interest. Elena Griffiths, now something of a local celebrity herself, had become an unofficial ambassador for the village's unique brand of Welsh hospitality. She regularly welcomed visitors to her garden, sharing stories about the day she met the Prince and Princess of Wales. Her daffodil bulbs, descendants of those her husband had planted 50 years earlier, had been requested by gardens around the world. It's not about the royalty, Elena would explain to visitors. It's about the reminder that love shows up in the smallest gestures. When someone reaches for you in a moment of need, when they steady you without thinking, when they show the world that you matter to them, that's what people respond to. That's what they want in their own lives. The photograph had also influenced royal protocol in subtle but significant ways. The palace communications team had learned to allow more space for spontaneous interactions, recognizing that the most powerful moments of connection couldn't be scripted or manufactured. Future royal engagements incorporated longer walkabouts, more opportunities for genuine conversation, and fewer rigid scheduling constraints. Jonathan Hayes, the communications secretary, had presented his findings to King Charles in a comprehensive report titled The Welsh Moment: Lessons in Authentic Royal Engagement. The report became required reading for all senior royal household staff and influenced training programs for working royals. The key learning, Hayes had written, is that the public craves authenticity over perfection. They want to see our family members as relatable human beings who happen to hold constitutional roles, rather than as distant figures playing parts in an elaborate performance. The Wales photograph succeeded because it showed genuine emotion and real connection. Our challenge is creating space for such moments while maintaining appropriate dignity and security. The royal family had embraced these lessons in various ways. King Charles had begun incorporating more impromptu conversations into his official visits, often extending scheduled meetings when genuine connections developed. Princess Anne had always been known for her direct, no-nonsense approach, but even she had softened her public interactions, allowing more of her dry humor and genuine warmth to show through. The photograph's influence extended into unexpected realms. Corporate leadership consultants began using it in seminars about authentic management styles. The image appeared in psychology textbooks as an example of secure attachment behavior. Art therapy programs used it to help clients explore concepts of support and protection in relationships. Dr. James Whitfield, a marriage counselor in Manchester, had printed and framed the photograph for his office waiting room. "My clients see it and immediately understand what healthy relationship dynamics look like," he explained. That instant, protective response, the trust in accepting help, the way they create a private moment within a public space, these are all markers of a strong, secure partnership. The fashion industry had also taken notice, though in ways that went beyond simple style copying. Catherine's choice to wear accessible, moderately priced clothing in the photograph had sparked discussions about aspirational versus attainable fashion. Designers began creating Welsh moment collections, elegant but approachable pieces that allowed women to feel confident without seeming artificial or overproduced. Sarah Williams, the young jewelry maker who had met Catherine at the Welsh market, found her life completely transformed. The princess had purchased one of her pieces during the visit, and, when photographs of Catherine wearing the Welsh slate and silver bracelet appeared in subsequent engagements, orders flooded in from around the world. "The attention has been incredible," Sarah told a reporter from Vogue 6 months later. "But what meant the most was how she really listened to my story, how she understood what the work meant to me. The success is wonderful, but that moment of being truly seen by someone that changed something fundamental about how I see myself and my art." Sarah had been accepted into the Royal College of Art on full scholarship, her application strengthened by the international recognition her work had received. She planned to specialize in contemporary interpretations of traditional Celtic designs, carrying forward the conversation between past and future that had so impressed Catherine. The photograph's impact on tourism had been equally transformative. Wales had experienced a 40% increase in visitors, with many specifically requesting tours of locations associated with William and Catherine's visit. But, rather than simply capitalizing on royal glamour, the Welsh Tourism Board had used the opportunity to showcase the deeper cultural treasures that had impressed the royal couple. Tours now included extended stops at community centers where visitors could hear traditional music, artisan workshops where they could learn about traditional crafts, and local markets where they could meet creators and makers. The message was clear: the royal couple had been drawn to Wales not just for a photo opportunity, but because the culture and community represented something valuable and authentic. The educational impact had been particularly significant. Schools across the UK and beyond began incorporating discussions of the photograph into curriculum about media literacy, authentic communication, and relationship dynamics. Teachers found that students who might typically dismiss discussions of the royal family as irrelevant were genuinely engaged when the conversation centered on the themes of authenticity and genuine connection that the photograph represented. 15-year-old Alex Thompson, a student at a comprehensive school in Birmingham, had written an essay about the photograph that was later published in a national youth magazine. "What I find interesting," Alex wrote, "is how this photo made everyone remember that famous people are still people. Like, they have the same feelings we do, the same ways of showing they care about someone. It made me think about how I want to treat people I care about, and how I hope they'll treat me." The essay had resonated with young people across the country, many of whom had shared their own interpretations and reflections on social media. The conversation had evolved far beyond royal watching into something more substantial, a generation exploring what authentic relationships look like in an age of digital performance and social media curation. Mental health professionals had also noted the photograph's positive impact. In a world where depression and anxiety among young people had reached concerning levels, the image provided a touchstone for hope and connection. Therapists reported clients referencing the photograph when discussing their relationship goals and their desire for genuine partnership. Dr. Lisa Chen, a clinical psychologist specializing in adolescent mental health, had written extensively about what she termed the Wales phenomenon. In her research, she'd found that young people who struggled with feelings of isolation and disconnection often used the photograph as a reference point for their aspirations. They see two people who have managed to maintain genuine connection despite enormous external pressure, Dr. Chun explained. It gives them hope that authentic relationships are possible, even in difficult circumstances. The photograph serves as visual proof that love can be both public and private, both strong and gentle, both royal and utterly human. The image had also influenced artistic expression in unexpected ways. Musicians had written songs inspired by the moment of connection it captured. Poets had crafted verses exploring themes of protection, partnership, and authentic love. Visual artists had created interpretations ranging from hyper-realistic portraits to abstract explorations of the emotional dynamics the photograph revealed. The Tate Modern had acquired several of these artistic responses for their permanent collection, recognizing the cultural significance of the moment and its influence on contemporary creative expression. The acquisition had sparked debates about the relationship between popular culture and fine art, between royal imagery and artistic merit, between momentary fame and lasting cultural impact. Gallery director Marcus Webb, who had organized the initial exhibition response to the photograph, reflected on its continuing influence during a panel discussion at the Venice Biennale. What we witnessed was the collision of several cultural currents: the hunger for authenticity, the democratizing power of digital media, the universal longing for genuine connection. The photograph became a catalyst for broader conversations about love, leadership, and what it means to be human in the public eye. As the first anniversary of the photograph approached, William and Catherine found themselves reflecting on the unexpected journey that had begun with a moment of instinctive care on Welsh cobblestones. They had watched their private moment become a global symbol, had seen their spontaneous affection inspire countless conversations about love, authenticity, and human connection. The experience had changed their approach to public life in subtle but important ways. They had become more comfortable with unguarded moments, more willing to let their genuine affection for each other show through in public settings. The positive response to their Welsh moment had reinforced their belief that the public craved authenticity over performance, connection over formality. "I think it taught us something important," Catherine reflected during a private conversation with her closest friend from university. "People don't want us to be perfect. They want us to be real. They want to see that despite all the protocol and pressure, we're still just two people who love each other and try to do good work in the world." The photograph continued to circulate on social media, particularly during significant anniversaries and milestones in William and Catherine's relationship. Each wedding anniversary saw renewed sharing of the image, with couples using it to express their own hopes for lasting love and mutual support. The image had also become a touchstone for discussions about modern monarchy and its role in contemporary society. Political scientists pointed to the photograph as evidence of the royal family's successful adaptation to digital age communication, while Republican critics acknowledged that it represented the monarchy at its most appealing and relatable. Professor David Morrison, a constitutional expert at Oxford University, had written extensively about the photograph's political implications. "What we saw in Wales was a perfect encapsulation of modern constitutional monarchy at its best, visible enough to maintain relevance, human enough to inspire affection, dignified enough to command respect." The photograph succeeded where decades of carefully managed public relations had only partially succeeded. It made the monarchy feel both necessary and beloved. As William and Catherine prepared for future engagements, they carried with them the lessons of that Welsh morning. They had learned that their greatest strength as public figures lay not in maintaining perfect facades, but in allowing their authentic selves to shine through their royal roles. They had discovered that the moments that mattered most to people were the moments that mattered most to them, the small gestures of love and care that made their relationship strong enough to bear the weight of public scrutiny and constitutional duty. The photograph from Llanfairpwll had become more than just an image. It had become a reminder that in a world often dominated by artifice and performance, there was still profound power in genuine human connection. It had shown that love, expressed simply and honestly, could cut through cynicism and speak directly to people's hearts. It had proved that sometimes the smallest moments could cast the longest shadows, creating ripples of hope and inspiration that continued to spread long after the cameras had stopped clicking and the crowds had gone home. In the end, perhaps that was the photograph's greatest gift, not just the beautiful moment it captured, but the countless beautiful moments it inspired in the lives of people who saw in William and Catherine's spontaneous affection a reminder of what was possible when two people chose to love each other authentically, publicly, and without reservation. The Welsh morning had given the world a photograph, But, more importantly, it had given the world hope that real love, protective, gentle, and enduring, remained not just possible but powerful in ways that continued to surprise and delight everyone who witnessed it.